So if you believe what you're doing is right, and I believe what you're doing is right, and vice versa for me as well, then we have to, it's in our best interest to band together and support each other, and to share what works and what doesn't work, and to remind ourselves like why we're fighting the good fight.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hennche.
Welcome back to The Path to Wealth. I'm your host, Hennche. Today we're joined by Dan Lewkowicz. He has over 15 years of experience in many facets of the real estate industry. He started his career in house hacking, quickly moved on to flip houses and around Detroit metro area. He then joined Fortis Net Lease as a senior advisor, specializing in commercial real estate investment sales. Dan is the senior director at Encore Real Estate Investment Services and specializes in shopping centers, medical office buildings, and industrial fulfillment centers. It's an honor to have you on the show today, Dan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm definitely excited to be here.
Yeah. And we already started right out the gate. You're very, very busy right now, which is something we don't hear from everybody lately. Transaction volume is so down over the last probably 12 to 18 months. So what's the mentality behind it? And you already touched up on it. It's in your work ethic, but where did that work ethic come from in your life?
Yes. I mean, listen, people ask me all the time about how the market is doing, what are current market conditions, how's transactional volume? And I really tell them, I'm happy to go into it and discuss it in detail, but in general, it doesn't matter. What matters is sticking to your fundamentals, sticking to your principles, knowing what you as an individual need to do to get your job done, and just doing it, just executing. So, for me, the motivation comes from, wanting to, quite frankly, provide for my family and ensure that they have, as much as possible in terms of having their needs met, and at the same time have an opportunity to learn and grow in whatever it is that they choose to do. So, right now, I think that it's definitely an interesting time. I'm finding that just like always, the more work that I put in, right, the more I stick to my fundamentals, the luckier I am.
Yeah. I think that's an important one to always remember is, the more work we put in, the luckier we tend to get. Did you have any role models when it comes to this in your life? Is that something that your parents passed on to this, or did that hustle mentality and that financial savviness that you have in your life now come from?
Well, I think, to a certain extent, I think that it came from several different people in my life. It definitely came from my father. My father was a very hard worker, a small business owner. He's a pharmacist. He always owned, for as long as I can remember, he owned his own pharmacy. And he just was someone that he did it no matter what. He put in the time and the energy and the effort no matter what. No matter how he felt, no matter what was going on, he was always accountable to that. My grandmother, my mother's mother, call her Bubby, which is Yiddish for grandmother. She was a very hard worker. She came to this country with nothing, and built what she had. She herself did a little bit of real estate investing in the 50s and 60s and on, and in the decades that ensued, despite the fact that she spoke almost no English. So I think that, in terms of my parents and grandparents, there's this mentality of just like, we're gonna figure it out, we're gonna make it happen. We might not have come from much or had much, and by way of resources, but we're gonna make it happen. And I'm thankful that my parents were able to provide for my brother and I, and put us through college. And I think that now the motivation is like the other generation, right? It's my kids. It's the fact that I have to hustle. Like I tell people, I have no choice. Success is not a choice for me. Success is what I have to have because I have children that I have to provide for. And then, in terms of the people that I've met along the way, in real estate specifically, who have been incredibly successful at what they do, just being able to watch them and learn from them and have, those character traits rub off. And, I've witnessed within commercial brokerage, I've had the opportunity to be around greatness. Around people that are just doing incredible things. Like the amount of transactional volume that they're doing on a day-to-day basis is like mind-blowing. So to be able to watch that and see that and know that it's possible has been a motivation for me. And it's kind of like, it's something that I've held myself accountable towards, right? I'm not saying that I'm at that level, but I hold myself accountable to strive to be at that level.
Yeah, that's quite inspiring. How do you manage to maybe spark that same in your kids? And I mean, you literally have a handful. How do you pass on the learnings and the vigor that you carry in yourself when it comes to the financial savviness that you've developed?
Yeah, so I think that first and foremost, it's developing a mindset of being curious with your children, right? Because I think children by nature have a lot of curiosity. So when I see that spark of curiosity in one of my children, I kind of just like tease it out. Oh, well, what do you mean by that? Well, what about this? What do you think about that? And it's just, for me, it's engaging in that dialogue and being able to help their mind grow, and then to bookmark that event in my mind for later down the road when I want to bring it back up in our conversation of, oh, do you remember when such and such a thing happened? So it's that, and it's asking a lot of questions. And then quite frankly, I firmly believe that the relationship between a child and adult is not a friendship relationship. I mean, it could be a friendly relationship, but these are not my friends. These are my children, right? However, I do believe that there is a tremendous value to the children to have the parent share about their personal and work life. So I'll often bring things up to my older children and discuss it with them, not in the vein of like, hey, let me just tell you what I'm doing in life. It's more of, hey, let me explain a situation. Let's talk about this. And, especially my older daughter who turns 14 next week, she's genuinely curious about real estate. I mean, this is a girl who in her free time, she'll send me a text message asking me to send her drone photos of properties that I'm working on so that she can get on the computer and superimpose like retail maps around the properties. I mean, to me, like, it makes me so happy to see that. So, it's just that bringing out that curiosity and having that discussion and explaining things. I'll never forget. This must have been, gosh, I feel like this was 6 or 7 years ago. So my oldest was, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and we had a whole conversation about entrepreneurship and business and explaining, like, the difference between someone who's working for a corporation, right, and trading time for money, and someone that has a business or that has some type of, entrepreneurial activity that they're involved in, where they might hire other people to help them. They might scale themselves, scale their time, invest their money, and eventually get to a point where other things or other people or other assets are working for them. My daughter said to me, she's like, I don't understand why anyone would ever want to have a W-2 job, and I was like, that's my girl.
I love that. But she's probably, you were able to teach her that at a stage where, she wasn't talked into the W-2 yet.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, the way this system evolves is like, it's just preparing you to become dependent, no?
Yeah, 100%. That's why school is from 9 to 5.
Yeah. And that's a conversation I keep having with people in my circle, or even my wife, for fact. Like when sometimes she's like, oh, but my friends do this, and I'm like, okay, but see, we're striving to be in a very small part of society. Like we cannot go by what our friends might do. I mean, some of our friends do exactly what we need to do, like you and others. But it's just like to get out of that original mindset that we were catered to. And what were some of the people that helped you really break that nut to realize, okay, this is truly not where I want to take my life, going down maybe that corporate alley, having that W-2 job, and actually building assets and leverage in life and having that freedom down the road?
I don't know that I can point to one specific person. I think for me, it was more seeing people in my life who were getting into their mid and late 70s. They're finally done working, right? They had put in their 40, 45 years of jail time, essentially.
Yeah.
And now they're, slowing down, and they're having health issues, and they don't have the same energy that they had. And just watching that and saying, like, I don't want to be that. I don't want that to be for me. I want to be able to enjoy my youth while I still have it. I want to be able to be productive and do what I want to do, but to also have that freedom. And then I started thinking about it. It's funny. It's a struggle for me internally to not get cynical about certain things, and this is one of them. I started thinking about it. I said, this is perfect. Corporate America has us exactly where they want us to be. We work as long as we can, right? As long as we are productive and healthy and have that vitality. And then right at the end, right when that is waning and going away, that's when we're done working. And I thought about it. I was like, I can understand if someone was building an army or had a corporation and wanted people to fight or work in that army or that corporation. Yeah, make the rules of engagement be that you keep somebody in that system until they're no longer useful, right? And and to me, that's exactly what it is. So I feel like I'm trying to beat the system. You know what I'm saying? And to your point before, I think it's so important to have like-minded people in your, physical interaction space, in your online interaction space, in your relationship space, to make sure that we give each other that support, because, really the vast majority of people don't think like this, right? So if you believe what you're doing is right, and I believe what you're doing is right, and vice versa for me as well, then we have to, it's in our best interest to band together and support each other, and to share what works and what doesn't work, and to remind ourselves like why we're fighting the good fight.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. Fighting the good fight, and by default, it will be only like 1 out of 20 people that we, depending on where we're going, that might share that side, and it always sparks me. Like it's invigorating to meet somebody who thinks alike. Like just before Christmas, I met an old friend from school, and he was looking at mobile home parks back in Europe, and I loved it. I was like, great, there's somebody who in a completely different continent developed in the same direction, while all the other students that we shared school with were just going about their 9 to 5.
Yeah. I think it's a great thing. It's really a great thing. I do have some friends locally that definitely share this perspective, and we talk from time to time about this, because I think it is important. And for me, like real estate, I think is one of those vehicles that you can use to plan your financial destiny and to create your financial destiny. Like I look at what I do, and I feel like, through brokerage and investing, it's possible to build an empire. It just is. It's possible to, the harder I work, the more time, energy, and resources I put into what I do, the more money I make. It's just straight up the case, right? I worked at major corporations before. I used to work at Amazon. The harder I work, the same exact amount of money I made. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is one of the amazing beauties of, real estate, is that you have an opportunity to get rewarded commensurate to the, amount of effort and energy that you put into it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what you said is exactly right. You do the work that brings you the cash, you use the cash to invest it, and, ultimately you build your own freedom vehicle. What was that like for yourself to map that out? The learning progression of like really understanding, okay, if I have X amount of money, I can go and I can take these investment vehicles and build a freedom vehicle for my family.
It was scary, because I looked at my lifestyle, and I looked at like average S&P returns, and I said, dude, I'm a hypocrite, because I'm this guy that's like preaching like independence and work hard and don't be a slave to the 9 to 5 and, ditch the W-2. But I'm going to be working for a long time if I don't make some changes, and those could be changes to lifestyle or changes to investment vehicles, because it makes a huge difference if you're getting 5 or 6% average annual return versus, 15% or 20%.
Yeah.
So for me, it's I'm not there. Like it's a journey, there's been different stages. And my latest stage is, starting for me to wake up and realize that I have to diversify more and find, better investment vehicles that are going to maintain their equity position or appreciate and provide cash flow, right? Whereas in the stock market, which again, stocks have their place, right? But in the stock market, what I don't like is that I have cash that's invested, and essentially like my principal could diminish. And it could diminish over a few days. It could diminish overnight. So, for me, it's definitely been a process, and it's been a learning process. I feel like, again, I'm looking at really 3 factors. Like I got to work harder to make more money, change lifestyle to spend less, find investment vehicles that give better returns, and like somehow within that matrix, shifting those up or down will impact at the end of the day the number of years left that I have to work.
Yeah, that's the formula at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm going to stop. You know what I'm saying? Like I love brokerage. I love doing deals. Like I'm in this business for the long haul, no doubt about it. I'm just saying like there's a certain freedom that comes with the understanding that someone doesn't have to do it, even if they still want to.
What do you love about the brokerage business so much?
I love the deal making aspect. Like I love, like right now, for example, I've got one deal that we're negotiating an LOI, but it's kind of paused because we're doing the seller's doing some interaction with one of the tenants in the shopping center in terms of extending the lease. Got another deal that I listed that's we have an accepted offer and we're getting a purchase agreement going right now. I've got another deal that I just listed and we have multiple offers. And then I've got another deal that I'm hoping to sign up the representation agreement on Friday. So they're all at different stages. So like to me, each one of those is a whole world, right? Each one of those deals has nuances. It's got different parties involved. It's got different, title companies involved and different aspects of the deal. So each one of those whole worlds is something that I have to kind of like make sure that it goes through the whole steps of the different parts of the stages properly so that it gets to closing. So for me, like, I like that. I really enjoy that part of it, the actual deal making part of it.
Which part of that journey you just described would you say is the most fragile, where you feel like it could all fall apart? Obviously it can fall apart at any part of it, but where do you feel like it's the most fragile?
Yeah, good question. So for me, it's definitely at the point where, between when you've listed the property and then, going under contract, because when you choose your buyer, you have to choose them so carefully, right? Because there's so many reasons, but that at that time when, especially there's multiple offers and you're weighing out the pros and the cons, like at that point, I take every step of the way very seriously. And especially at that moment, because I want to go under contract with the buyer that's going to provide the best price, the best terms, and the highest assurity of close, and to be the least bit of, the least pain in the rear to everyone involved. Yeah. Right. And I always in the back of my mind, I'm saying, well, if I don't pick the right buyer, this, not only could the deal backfire, which could negatively affect my client, the seller, but, he might even decide to walk away at that point. So for me, that's when, a lot of nights, up without sleep, trying to figure out who the best buyer is to go with. Typically once we go under contract and the due diligence period is underway and the buyer starts, spending money on, environmental reports and surveys and things like that, unless something blows the deal up, most deals proceed to closing. But to me, it's the beginning. It's the real beginning stages, because especially in a market like today's, we want to pick the buyer that's going to close, because if we pick somebody, and let's say we have a letter of intent right now, it might take a week to get the purchase agreement. And then we might have a 30-day due diligence period or 45-day due diligence period, right? So, by the time we get through the due diligence period, it might be 2 months from now. Yeah. And to start all over, especially in a changing market, that is not in the benefit of the seller at all.
Yeah. That has changed quite tremendously. I think, we come kind of out of the golden decade or the golden years where buyers were lined up and cash was widely available. And now the whole thing has changed so much that also before the transactions were going a lot quicker. So now everything is spread out. So once you invested 2 months or the seller invested 2 months, obviously you don't want to have a buyer that can't close. So, what are for you as the broker who brings the buyer to the table, what are the things you're really trying to look out for in a buyer that in this environment qualifies? Obviously they need a strong record, but what are kind of the distinct things you're focusing on?
So, first of all, I'm going to look at just the basics. Like I'm going to look at things like their due diligence period. Are they asking for a 21-day or 30-day due diligence? Or are they asking for a 45-day due diligence with the option to extend for an extra $5,000 or $10,000, right? Is this somebody that is in a 1031 exchange? Typically 1031 exchange buyers may pay more for an asset, but if they're in a 1031 exchange, are they also identifying 2 or more other properties? What's the likelihood that they're going to close on this property? Have they visited the property? Because we work nationwide, so I sell net lease properties all over the country, but have they visited the property? Are they going to visit the property? How familiar are they with the property? Do they know the nuances of the deal yet? Do they have any questions? Do they own similar properties? What's their track record like? Do they have proof of funds? Do they have a lender relationship? All of these questions, need to be asked when vetting a buyer. And, it's much more important. It's always important, but it's much more important today than it was a year or two ago. Because a year or two ago, it's like there were 10 people lined up at the table, right? So if this guy fell out, somebody else was there, and maybe even at a higher price because we're moving down the line and prices were going up. Today it's even more important. You want to make sure that you have somebody that's serious. It's not just going to tie up the property, and string you along and then have to start over. So those are all, really good questions to ask. In some cases, maybe you have them, someone that they've worked with before, and you might ask for a reference and talk to that person. It all depends on the deal, but really, like, we're looking for closers. We're looking for people who are serious and are going to perform exactly like they say. Because, the truth is like, there's all different types of real estate investors. I've dealt with some incredibly skilled and talented and wealthy individuals. And, those types of investors, they execute. They say you're going to have a purchase agreement back in 2 days. You're going to have it back in a day. And that's another thing too, is you can ask all the questions you want, but sometimes you have to also feel things out. And what I found is like, if I'm dealing with somebody that's like giving me a hard time about certain small nuances right up front, chances are, I have to feel them out, but chances are it's not going to go well. Like they're probably not going to be closers, right? Or if, they're telling me they're going to give me back a turn of the purchase and sale agreement in 2 days and it takes a week, we have to bug them a bunch of times. Like serious sellers that want the asset in question, they act like serious buyers. They act like serious buyers who want the asset in question.
Yeah. I just had a thought, and that might just be because I just traveled overseas, and there was some interesting. So I traveled to India, and I'm dealing with a lot of Indians too, given that my wife is Indian too. And I was wondering, do you see a difference in the ethnic background of the buyers that you're dealing with when it comes to the nuances that you were just pointing towards?
Sure. So I was just joking a couple of days ago with a loan broker that we should make a skit about all the different ethnicities and how they approach, commercial real estate deals, because it's so different. I definitely noticed certain nuances with certain ethnic groups. I'm not going to say which ones or what nuances.
We can discuss that off the record. No, keep going.
Yeah, but there are definitely nuances. I don't know. I got it in my head right now. There's a lot of situations, where people come in with different terms or different prices or different this or that. And it's interesting to see, as you said, there are nuances, between one group and the other. There definitely are. There's no question about it.
So as the broker, you're basically the deal maker. You're also a little bit of a kingmaker. Like, if I come in as a buyer, then you can be my backbone, or you can be the guy who's basically talking the seller out of putting my offer forward. So you're building relationships over the cycle of a property. Like a property might actually go through your hands twice or thrice in your lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm dealing with a shopping center right now that I sold to this buyer a few years ago, and now we're working on selling it again.
Yeah. So this is truly like a component of you where it's actually a different way of a recurring revenue, because you want to make sure that you pick somebody who might turn around and hand it back to you and be like, hey, let's do this deal one more time in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that that's ever something that's crossing my mind during a deal, because I have to look out for my client and I have to pick the best buyer for the client, not the buyer necessarily that's going to be the best for me in terms of reselling it. And also, I mean, typically the deal cycles are longer for these types of assets, with some certain exceptions that we can talk about. But, I think it just becomes a matter of two things of, building relationships. Like in this example, I built a relationship with the buyer who I sold the asset to. And then the second factor is just staying in touch with them, asking them what I can do to provide value for them. And then at a certain point, there's something that they need help with that I can help them out with, and can be another successful transaction.
Yeah, it sounds so generic, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a relationship business. It's like, and the staying in touch component that you mentioned is really important. And given what you're seeing in the transactions that are happening right now, the transactions that you're taking care right now, where do you think we are in the overall sentiment of the market? Do you think the transaction volume will be picking up quite significantly over the rest of this year? Or
so the transactional volume will definitely pick up significantly at some point, right? And I believe, let's backtrack a little bit. What's going on right now that's really causing the transactional volume to decrease overall is twofold. So number one, it's just flat out changes in interest rates, right? We went from an environment where typical commercial property wasn't uncommon to get an interest rate in the low 3% range. Today, interest rates are somewhere around 6.25%. So effectively, the actual interest rate has doubled, which, if you look at what that does for your cash flow, it's incredibly significant. Okay. So number one, that makes certain assets not really financeable because it doesn't make sense, right? Something with a 4 or 5% return doesn't make sense to pull out a loan at 6.25%. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, as a direct result of that, what we saw over the last 14 months was that prices pretty much across the board, even in the net lease space, which is pretty sticky in terms of where cap rates are, we saw prices we saw cap rates increase and prices decrease, and they did that very rapidly. So this created what I call, a market dislocation between buyers and sellers, right? Sellers are stuck on prices in general, not everyone. The sophisticated sellers are not, but many sellers are stuck on, pricing from 14 months ago. And they have the fallacy that interest rates are going to go back to where they were, which they're not. And then many buyers are saying, oh, well, prices are going to continue to fall. So I'm looking 6 months down the road. So now the discrepancy is even larger. So what's fueling that is that interest rates are continuing to climb, right? We have another meeting coming up of, the Fed has another meeting, and everyone was hoping that they'd do another 25 basis point hike. I think they'll do 50 at least because of certain, key economic factors that came out and the data that came out. So, the answer to your question in terms of when this is going to stop, when are we going to see transactional volume go back up? And again, it's where it's at because of the dislocation and because of the fact that many properties no longer make sense to finance, in the current interest rate environment. So we will see transactional volume go back up when we have a sustained period of time where the Fed does not change interest rates, right? So we're going to need to see interest rates stay the same or relatively the same for, let's call it 6 or 9 months, I think, before prices can even start to stabilize. Once they've started to stabilize, what will happen is wherever interest rates are, cap rates are going to go up, right? And then you'll have that nice, healthy spread, especially like in my field in net lease. We look for a certain, threshold, maybe somewhere around 200 basis points, maybe a little bit more between interest rates and average cap rate, right? So once we see those interest rates start to level off and stay at a predictable place for a sustained period of time, then the cap rates will start to level off at a higher rate. And I think the transactional volume in the market will, go back to a healthier place. So from my perspective, I don't see that happening for probably another year. Just because, like I said, I think we need 6 months minimum of stability. And I think that we have 6 months minimum of interest rate hiking. So, there's a solid year for you. And again, it doesn't, that's no excuse. It's no excuse for a deal maker, for an investor, for a limited partner, a sponsor, for a broker. Stick to your fundamentals, work hard. You're going to see a lot of people fall out at this time and get out of the industry, whatever part of the industry that is. If you're able to stick to your principles and keep your head down and focus, okay, not only are you going to become better at what you do, but there's going to be more business out there for you because there will be less people chasing it.
Yeah, that's actually a point that I've heard before, that when the market kind of crunches together, and you keep expanding and you just stick to your fundamentals, make sure that you survive the winter, but at the same time you expand your footprint, you build your relationships with those people that stick around, and you will come out stronger on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where do you personally see opportunity over the next 12 months? I think you, as a broker, you kind of have the finger on the pulse. You see a lot more underwriting. Obviously, professional investors, we also do our underwriting, but where do you currently, and not, this is not meant to be investment advice for anybody, but just like where are you currently seeing opportunity for yourself? Where would you put your own money?
So in terms of like what's going on in the broad big picture, I see opportunity for whoever figures out what to do with all of America's vacant office buildings. I think there's tremendous opportunity there. I think that you're going to see landlords that are really going to be hurting and that need to offload these properties. And, those that can come up with the capital and the creative solutions to repurposing these office buildings, I think are going to have a tremendous opportunity. I think that now that rates have gone up, I think there's an opportunity a bigger opportunity in private lending. I think that it's going to, private lending rates will go up commensurate with the amount that, interest rates have gone up. I definitely think there's opportunity there. I think in general, there's opportunity across the board in commercial real estate over the next, let's call it 24 to 36 months, because there's a certain phenomenon that's going to happen, right? So, a sizable percentage of commercial loans that are originated have 5-year terms on them, right?
Yeah.
So they might be amortized over 20, 25, or 30 years, but the actual term of the loan is 5 years. So as we talked about at the beginning of the show, properties that cash flowed really well when debt was at 3% may not cash flow very well at all at 6, 6.5, or 7%. So there's going to be a wave of individuals that are going to be, in a position where their deals will not pencil out anymore at the current interest rates when their loans become due. So what I think that's going to do is that's going to present a lot of opportunities for buyers. And that's also going to kick up the transactional volume because there's going to be a lot of people that have to sell. And the reason that they have to sell is that their deal either will have negative cash flow at the new rates, which an investor likely won't want to hold on to, or in order to refinance, they're going to have to bring cash to closing, which again, a lot of investors don't want to do. So that's going to create opportunity across the board, not in one specific, asset class, but, I look at things like multifamily where the cap rates have been compressed to numbers that don't even make sense, right? And then when they got all the way, to a number that doesn't make sense, and then they went even lower than that, and then interest rates shot up by 3 or 4, maybe even 5%. Okay, now those deals are going to have to get sold again. So I think there's opportunity there as well. I like short-term rentals. I like the concept of them. I think they're great. I like RV parks. I really like private lending. I think that's a great space to be in because it's like pretty much completely passive. I think there's tons of opportunities. You just have to have, an open mind and the knowledge and the network to be able to figure out how to make it happen.
Yeah, nice. But that's you just dropped something very casually at the end. You have to have the knowledge and the network to make it happen. And those are two essential pieces, especially I think the network part. So what was it like to build your own network when you started out as a broker in a brokerage? Like you originally, when you came into the space, you didn't have the knowledge or the network. What was that progression like for yourself to build that?
Yeah. So, I definitely had the sales background. So that was helpful because like the sales fundamentals are the same. So that was definitely helpful. The knowledge, man, it was like a figure it out for yourself thing. Unfortunately, it was just go do it and figure it out. And I remember like the first deal I had, I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, And I actually created a course called the CRE Pro course because I felt like there was not adequate training in the commercial real estate brokerage space. And that's a course people can take a look at creprocourse.com. So for me, it was like I was learning just by watching the people that were like the top producers in the office and by reading as much as I could. And honestly, just like Googling everything, every single thing I could. I had a spreadsheet. Anytime not a spreadsheet, I had a document. Anytime a term came up, I didn't know what it was, I would Google it and then I would just copy and paste the definition. And at the end of every week, I would read through it and just try to memorize all these definitions of different terms. There's not really a lot of resources out there. There aren't a lot of books on net lease and brokerage. So it was a lot of like just figuring it out. I did do a lot of networking on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I have over 15,000 followers on LinkedIn. So for me, I got involved in a LinkedIn mastermind called the Next Level Mastermind, which is, 18 commercial real estate professionals across the country. I ended up starting a business with one of the guys in the mastermind. So that was amazing. But I just started like reading everything I could and learning everything I could. And then just, building databases and cold calling and, starting to build relationships with owners, which for me has been one of the most rewarding aspects of the job. I got a call yesterday from an individual I sold a fast food restaurant for him. And then I also sold almost $50 million worth of resorts for him last year.
Nice.
And I've never met him. Most of my clients I never meet. It's mostly all over email and the phone. But I always felt a strong connection to this individual. And quite frankly, I learned a ton from him. I would just, every time we got on the call, I would just shut up and listen and ask him questions, ask his opinion on things. And for me, that was a big part of the educational experience, was just to get knowledge and, wisdom from individuals who have been successful as real estate investors. And, I'm definitely very thankful for those relationships. In fact, it was probably the highlight of my day yesterday to have a 30-minute call with this individual who, I'm sure is busy and, was taking some time out of his day just to say hi and tell me what's going on with him. But yeah, the answer to your question is like a lot of networking that way. I have a extensive background in house flipping. I used to go to a lot of real estate investment association in-person meetings to network with other house flippers and private lenders and contractors and, listen to speakers. So, all that. And then, just reading anything I could get my hands on, even if it wasn't directly related to net lease, just about commercial real estate and sales and whatnot. And, picking people's brains. I remember when I first started, I made an appointment with every single person in my brokerage to literally sit down for 15 minutes and ask them what worked for them, So it's been a lot of just, figuring it out, but at the same time, a lot of networking with people who, have already done this and have been successful.
Yeah. Do you have any women in the brokerage?
We do. Yes, we do. Primarily not in brokerage roles. In terms of actual brokers, and agents, we have one out of 37. So ratio is highly slanted, in the other direction. But yeah, we do have some other women on the team. I had an intern who was, a lovely young lady, and some of our administrative staff are women as well.
That one out of 37, do you feel like it's a plain level field, or that she can actually perform just like you guys? Or because just out of my own experience, the other day I was thinking, wow, all the brokers I'm dealing with are men.
It's definitely a male-dominated industry. There's no question about it. I don't think it's a level playing field. I would like it to be a level playing field. We had an article written up about, the CRE Pro course, about how our course was helping to level the playing field amongst minorities and women who were looking to get into commercial real estate, because we had a kind of like an all-access educational platform. I think it's a great career. It's a great industry. I really love it. I encourage, more women to get involved. And I think that, anyone can be incredibly successful in this building, in this business.
In this building, only in this
yeah,
building.
Exactly. So long as you have integrity, you work hard, and you focus on the fundamentals. But yeah, there's definitely, I believe, an uneven playing field in brokerage nationwide.
What do you think keeps women out? Because if, for example, I live in New York, and if I look at the real estate brokers that transact apartments and houses, it's a lot of women in New York. But when it comes to commercial real estate, it's mainly men. What do you think makes the difference?
I don't know. I really don't. I bet you it's just one of those industries that was always dominated by men, and it stayed that way. I don't see any reason. I know some women in the industry that are incredibly talented and incredibly successful. So there's there's nothing about the job that makes it that men or women should be more prone to success. I think anybody can have success in this industry.
Yeah. One question I really like to ask all the time is, what do you consider a life well lived?
Ooh, that's such a good question. A life well lived. I think a life well lived is one where the individual has happiness and fulfillment and has enough of their basic needs taken care of that they can give to and help others. Right. I think that it's so basic, but so important. I think that oftentimes, and I'm speaking for myself, I find myself in a situation where it's like, well, I have to take care of this for myself, my family, my, et cetera, et cetera. I can't go out and yet, granted, taking care of your family is other people, but I think family is an extension of self. So when am I finally in a situation where I'm like, you know what, I have the peace of mind to sit back and say, you know what, myself and my family is taken care of. Let me go out there and do something good for somebody else, And honestly, like the busier that I get and the more responsibilities that I have, the fewer and far between those moments are. So I think that's what it is like, to me, I would be at such peace to know that everything was taken care of so that I can go out and do good things and help others. And I think that the only way to get to that point is, even when it seems like there's too much going on, is to make sure that I take time out of my day to go and do something good. Like, one of the things that I like to do is, people reach out to me on LinkedIn and they're just getting into real estate investing or just getting into brokerage, and they have questions. And I tell them that we can get on a call and talk. And like, it's so rewarding for me, because these people are so thankful to talk to somebody who, I was there, not that long ago. Right. And when I was there was somebody who was there for me. So for me to be that person and to be able to give back and to share insight and information and to network with people, it's so rewarding. And then, I've had situations where, like, a few years later, the guy reaches out to me and is like, "Hey man, I just bought my 3rd RV park. Just wanted to give you an update." And I'm like, "Oh, that is so cool." So I think that that's the solution, is to make sure that those activities are done, even when it seems like somebody doesn't have the headspace or the ability to do it.
Yeah. And those are the priceless kind of calls, like when somebody, and I remember those mentors in my life, like 20 years back, like it could be a single lesson that they taught me, and I still think of them whenever that applies.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the amazing things about real estate, is I feel like in other careers, granted, I've never been as deep in a career as I am in real estate, but in other fields and other careers, I don't think there's so much knowledge share. And I don't think there's so much, networking as there is in real estate. I mean, like, one could look at it and say, don't give advice to another guy going into brokerage. He's competing with you. Don't give advice to another investor investing in your asset class. He or she's competing with you. But in real estate, there's such an abundance mentality, and there's so much opportunity. Like, there are so many situations where, you can reach out to somebody to get information and they'll give it to you gladly, right? Because it's like that idea that, the better you get and the better I get, the better we're going to get together. And I just think that that's such a cool thing. So for anybody who's listening and who's, in this space, like, reach out to people, reach out to me if there's anything I can do. There are people out there that want to help you. There are people out there that have information that you don't have. One of the biggest mistakes that you can make is to think that you have to go it alone, and to think that you have to figure out everything yourself. That is nowhere near the most efficient path towards success, right? There are so many people that are willing to help you get there. Just, reach out and ask and network and make those connections. There's so much value that you can get and that you can give.
100%. Well, Dan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and this is beyond inspiring. And where can people, for one, find the course that you mentioned, the commercial real estate course, and connect with you? What are the platforms that you like to connect on besides LinkedIn, maybe?
Sure. So the course can be found on our website, which is CRE, like commercial real estate, procourse.com, CREprocourse.com. You can reach out to me, like you had mentioned, on LinkedIn. My first name is Dan, last name Lewkowicz, Lewkowicz. Again, that's Lewkowicz. And, if you have property, you want to know what it's worth, you want to sell, or you just want to talk about real estate, you can reach out to me on my cell phone. It's 248-943-2838. Again, 248-943-2838. If there's anything I can do at all to add value, or if there's anything where we might be able to work together, please reach out. And I definitely would love to connect with more people.
Awesome. I love that. And I love that, that you said that giving or sharing makes a difference, because I truly think that's sometimes we work so hard to fulfill our own dreams and wishes. And then only we notice that it's really in the sharing aspect and in the giving aspect.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's so much, that reward, that fulfillment when you see somebody else succeed whom you've helped. I mean, that feels so good. It really feels so good. And that's a gift that you want to be able to give other people and give yourself. And the only way to do that is by sharing, by sharing that knowledge and that wisdom and experience. And it'll come back 100-fold, there's no doubt about it.
I love that. Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.